Okay, well, just to kick off with the first question, 82% of men in startups believe their companies spend about the right amount of time addressing diversity. Nearly half of women disagree, saying not enough time was devoted. How do you think companies can approach this issue? And maybe we'll start with you, Carl, on that one.
Yeah, I think that when we talk about the right amount of time, we need to really get into the granular details here. What are we talking about? Because we need to go back to the recruitment cycle of how are we attracting women, how are we hiring women, and how are we retaining women, and what are we doing about it? If women don't see that it is aligned and there's a gap in terms of what male entrepreneurs are doing, that definitely speaks volume to what they're doing in terms of retaining and attracting women in the business.
Okay, Stephen, what do you think?
Yeah, obviously as a founder now myself and as an entrepreneur, it's an interesting word, but we're actively recruiting at the moment, and we've just hired a very good candidate. She's a lady from Citibank, and during that whole process, for me, it was about transparency. We looked at people on their merits. It wasn't to do with male or female or anything like that. It was just purely on the merits, on the experience, and what the value add would be. And that's really how we've approached it all along. So I'd like to think that everyone is doing the same. And if they're not, then they should be. And I know there was a report that came up with statistics that talked about this, and undervalued certain sectors, different classes of society, that everyone has value to add, and it has to be on merit, and that's how it should be approached.
I think it has to be on merit, but we need to also recognize that there's systematic, historical lack of privilege on one side of the gender coin. And I think we need to recognize that and need to move forward, because historically men have been more privileged in this area, in the workforce. Females make up 48% of the workforce today, but that's not always historically been true. It's been as a result of push for more human rights efforts, civil rights efforts, in addition to wars, where women had to fill in spaces, where men had to go to war. So historically, men have been more privileged, and I think that you need to consider that level of privilege when you're looking at your diversity framework.
Okay, and Gavin?
So I think it needs to be quite explicit. I think you need to set out to have a gender balance, and whether that's 50-50 or 51-49 or something else. And I did look at our business over the last couple of weeks, and 40% of our non-IT people are female. And if that was representative across the whole business, that would be okay, I think. However, all of our IT people are guys, and we only went out of our way to hire, explicitly to hire a lady into our IT tech group once, and we couldn't find a candidate that was interested in the job. But we had lots of guys who were interested in the job, and started to understand why that might be, and that's, hopefully we get towards that today as well, because that's the solution to the existing problem that we have right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that might link into the next question, that experts predicted there would be a global shortage of 2 million cybersecurity professionals by 2019, and obviously this would be a big concern. How do you think the industry can attract young school leavers to a career in cybersecurity to create the supply of new people?
Happy to start with that one.
Yeah.
Obviously people have heard of Code Dojo, and people doing programming and whatnot. I think there's a good merit for Cybersecurity Dojo. If that doesn't exist, I tried to Google it last night before saying it today, and I couldn't find anything. So maybe you heard it here first today, that maybe we should look to do something along those lines. But for me, cybersecurity is made up of multiple aspects. There's the practical side, which is network defenses, it's setting up group policies, it's understanding networking and whatnot. Then you've got the theoretical side, which is around risk management and understanding business risks and how a business operates. If we can get to school children, but also then second level schools and whatnot, and obviously colleges, to be looking at all of these aspects on a sliding scale or an increasing scale of maturity, I think people leaving and coming into the workplace will be far better placed to be able to understand the risks to an organisation, because at the end of the day, the business has to win, and security can't be just for security's sake. So if we think along those lines and then tie it back to the technical side of it, I think that'd be a really good place. But Cybersecurity Dojo, that's the buzzword for today.
Yeah. And Gavin?
I think we have to start with the why of cybersecurity. Why would people get involved? So if we know it's a male-dominated culture at the moment, and unless something significant changes in there, it's going to continue to be the same. I think that's, you can increase throughput in colleges. There's a lot of for-profit colleges offering cybersecurity courses. I think you start with a foundation in IT and then you specialise into something around cybersecurity. The new accountancy training, which is on the job, and then you go to college for 2 days a week. I think that's an option, but that's just throughput problems. It's still going to be male dominated. I think if you go to the schools and you go to first year, second year, third year, and you go to the maths clubs, which is really where a lot of this is heading anyway, and you start talking about why you would enter cybersecurity. If you want to build a hospital, if you want to build a factory, if you want to build a new IT suite, it's going to be under threat because it makes money. Would you like to help protect the services that are going to be under threat? So not the coding and the lines, that's the hell of cyber, and unless you have an ingrained interest in that, that's not going to be a chosen path. But if you start talking to people, guys and girls at a younger age, about why cybersecurity is required and why it's an important skill, I think that's maybe when you start to build a deeper understanding and maybe generate an interest for women that it doesn't currently hold.
Very good. Carl, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it has to do with two things. One is exposure, and I think you guys talked to that quite well. It's about exposing young people, men, girls, and boys, to cybersecurity and the jobs in cybersecurity and what that could look like in terms of their future. The other thing from a female angle would be removing the barriers to entry. So once you have the exposure to cybersecurity, you go, okay, as a girl, you want to build a career on that. How do you then get involved? How do you then remove barriers to entry so that you're at an equal playing field?
And can you articulate some of the barriers to entry that you think?
Yeah, no, of course. So I think some of them are more explicit and some of them are more inexplicit. Some of the more explicit ones would be, for example, culture. So you might not feel comfortable as a girl pursuing a path in cybersecurity because maybe you did an internship in a cybersecurity firm and you thought, hey, this is not for me. This is not where I can see myself, and you might explicitly drop off. We see statistics for women in cybersecurity shows that a lot of women drop off mid-careers in the cybersecurity industry, whereas for men it's very low.
Oh, very good.
He gets to do karaoke now.
I'm sorry?
He gets to do karaoke with the
Yeah,
mic.
he's got a proper mic now.
Can I make a quick
Yeah, absolutely.
explicit, implicit? My 16-year-old daughter came in to do some work in transition year for me, and some of the work we do is for Microsoft Xbox. And I asked her to write a blog on girls in gaming and what they like and what games they play, and is it any different from guys? And it turns out that it is. It's very different. Megan interviewed 50 people, and every one of them had been bullied. All the girls had been bullied online, and most of them had created fake guy-looking profiles to play online so that they could just get on and play. So if there's a culture at gaming level that it's not for girls, what's it like going to a computer sciences course? What's it like going into cybersecurity? And I think there's a bar problem as well. I think the bar is too high for cybersecurity. If you need thousands and hundreds of thousands of more people in it, if you're not building PCs for your friends and families from the time you're 12, it looks like they don't want you. It's not the case. Not everybody has to be the rock star.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work for a lot of people in that space, and I think the bar is too high.
Right.
And I think that sometimes it goes into our psyche, talking about the implicit side. If we think of the archetype of the archetype person in cybersecurity, the superstar, we think of a man automatically in our minds, and it's some of those implicit judgments and biases that creates a barrier for entry for women in this space, whether they decide or the industry decides for them that it's not for them.
Right.
It's interesting. In my experience, when I was doing the CISO role, there was lots of women in senior positions, both in IT and in management. So I don't know whether I've been sheltered from this to a degree. Obviously, you read about it all the time, and you see, Enterprise Ireland doing female entrepreneur programs and whatnot. So it's obviously pervasive, not just in security, it's other aspects of everyday life, to be honest. So
I think you've definitely been maybe a bit sheltered on that, because the statistics show that men are 9 times more likely to hold C-suite positions in cybersecurity, and men are 9 times more likely to hold managerial positions in cybersecurity. And then couple that with the fact that women tend to drop off mid-career in cybersecurity, well, there is a lot of implicit and explicit judgments to be made.
I think it's probably testimony now, looking back to the companies that I was working in, that they really looked after and embraced diversity and made sure that they hired the right people to do the right job, based on merits.
Great. If someone's interested in cybersecurity, and bearing in mind what you said, Gavin, that maybe some of the female candidates haven't been doing the activities because of bullying, etc., during their when they're younger, where should people actually look to get into a career in cybersecurity?
Me?
Yeah.
Sure. I alluded to it earlier on. There's different aspects to IT security or cyber security or information security. Obviously GDPR, you've got data protection now, so someone can specialise in that. Someone can look at ethical hacking and understand how to ethically hack into systems. That then leads to, well, how the hell do you go about doing that? There's open source tools out there that one could be learning about, understanding networking. So that's IT technical side of it. I also mentioned around risk management, which is more theoretical side of it, business risks, understanding the bottom line to business. So there's a business angle that people can take. So it really depends on where one wants to get to. From my perspective, I started off down the technical track. I used to be a developer. I used to look after databases, used to look after Unix administration systems. I got involved in audits. And it was through audits that it lended myself getting into the cybersecurity and ultimately being a CISO. And very quickly I learned as a CISO that all of those things that I had learned on that journey really came to the fore when you're trying to design an information security management system which is mindful of business risks, because the business must always win. What is the culture of the organisation that they can actually accept and be tolerant of that? But really being able to sit down with the technical folks to say, what can we achieve together based on the IT strategy, the IT security strategy, and actually implement that. So there's numerous aspects to security, and I think that's why they maybe tend to be deemed to be rock stars, because they understand everything to do with IT, but also be able to speak to business leaders, to be able to sell. I think Paul's opening 10 commandments, if I call them that, when he was doing his Irish jig earlier on. Paul Flatley, by the way. He talked about being a salesperson, and cybersecurity is sales. You do see resistance, there is friction, because there is that fear of getting in the way of the business. So if you can build a career based on all those things I just described, it'd be a really good way to go about it.
Very good. Carl?
Yeah, I think right now I went on LinkedIn just to see how many jobs there were in cybersecurity in Dublin, or I think, no, it was for Ireland. There was over 150 jobs. So there's definitely a lot of openings, and it's about having that level of exposure and doing your thinking through. There's different jobs in cybersecurity, and it's what is right for you. I think the other aspect is around your network, leverage your network, get to know people in the space, get to know what that means, get to know where your fit is. And I think that goes for any industry, to be honest with you.
No problem. Gavin?
I'm just thinking about what the guys are saying as we go along, and if you expect to create 20,000 cybersecurity experts in the next 4 years, you can't, because it's IT first and then it's specialising in security beyond that. But if the industry did want to fix itself, if it did want to deal with this gap and this problem that it's creating, training the mid-level guys to step up and bring the new guys into that lower level education piece and actually create a career path that's very clearly defined. It's like trying to create new consultants. You can't do that. You got to bring doctors up. You got to bring people up into that junior space and then give them the time to get the experience. It just depends on how committed the business is to creating to finding a solution. We couldn't compete with. We were looking for new staff, new employees. We couldn't compete with the Facebooks and the Googles in Dublin. So we opened an office in Newcastle, where there is a high .NET grouping of skills, and we hired phenomenal guys there. phenomenal skill sets. So we went to where the talent is, as opposed to trying to create 500 new .NET developers here in Dublin with 5 years experience. You just can't, it's impossible. So 500, 5,000, 50,000, it's an impossible number. But you can build up from that mid-level, I think. Maybe that's an idea.
Yeah. I think, sorry, Coral.
Oh, no, I was just going to add on to this. Like, in terms of finding solutions, there's going to be a lot more jobs. The numbers are definitely going to grow in terms of demand for cybersecurity. There is definitely headroom to be played here because 1 in 10 people in cybersecurity are women. So there's definitely ways to make sure we can bring in more women to fill those skills gaps as well. Exactly.
Very good. I think that almost links into the next question, which was, there are many ways of entering into the cybersecurity industry if it's something someone was interested in. But where would be the best place to start? For instance, we start with you, Stephen, because you mentioned a lot of different sort of specialisms that you could start with.
Right, okay. Said too much, didn't I? No. I think for me, the fundamentals of security, obviously you just talked about IT, having a good understanding of IT core components, understanding networking, because ultimately the network reflects everything that is happening. Data is transferring, systems are connected, and ultimately, that's where you're going to see risks, unusual user behavior and whatnot. So you can fully understand how a network interconnects, how machines get on there, how data is represented on a network, encryption. I think that's a really good place to then be able to approach risk management strategies to say, where does the risk lie, based on business risk, crown jewels, material assets, where do they sit, how do they all communicate with each other. I think that would be a really good starting place because you can't dive into, being a security professional without that background. I think it's key. It takes time, it needs nurturing, there's going to be errors made, and that's just trial and error. But that's my thought in relation to it. But the other side of it, just before I hand it off to the rest of the guys, is that there's so many open source tools out there that people can avail of, like Backtrack, Kali. All these are preloaded with tools that people can use and understand how it works. You've got the social engineering toolkit, so you can actually look at how to create phishing emails, create fake web pages. There's YouTube videos where people can assess all of this. So there's lots of things that people can be doing to understand, how cyber criminals are going. And last but not least is to think like an attacker. Don't think like a good guy. Because if you think like that, you're actually going to be thinking everything's safe when, that's not the reality. So,
Great. What do you think, Cam?
I guess we talked earlier on about paid college, for-profit colleges. There's a whole industry ready to pop up there because we're not going to get them through the schools quick enough. They're just not going to scale up in that way. But I do think if we're looking to talk about the long-term solution here, it's actually to go into transition year and go in as one of the big IT outfits. And we all know them, and they can bring teams of guys and girls through their companies, show them what they do. Don't talk about cybersecurity, don't talk about it as a thing, because for lots of cultural reasons and for lots of other reasons, that's a bit of a put-off, obviously, because we don't have women walking through into that industry looking for a start in the same way we do with guys. Walk them through the businesses and show them what IT is. IT is the future. It's not robotics and it's not automated cars. It's going to be everything. So do you want to be involved in shaping everything? I think that's maybe where you get more engagement from girls as well as guys.
Yeah. What do you think, Cor?
I agree with that. I think it's very evolutionary. If you show them that where the industry is today, the excitement level will be a lot lower than if you show what are the opportunities overall from an aggregate perspective. Like, where can this go and what does this mean from a technology perspective, and what can it mean for you, and what role can you play in that?
Great. And how would you go about closing the ratio between men and women in the tech sector? Carl, do you want to start that?
Oh my God. I think that there's so much to be done. So if we look at it from a macro perspective, from a societal level, there's a lot that we can do. Just even when there's a lot of studies to be done where if you have a girl versus a boy, there's a lot of implicit bias that you have when you have a girl in terms of, like, You might call her more like beautiful things, or you might have her play with fewer Legos and things like that. Just from growing up, you have less exposure, I think, to more of the technical, mathematical, scientific sides than a boy would. So the implicit bias is built in from the time that you're a toddler, or you're naturally born, to the fact that you go through grade school and then you have societal forces like acting up on you, telling you who you should be, where you fit, and what sort of archetypes in terms of your careers that you should be built into. And then we move into like the graduate school system where we have like cultures. And you talked about the gaming culture, for example, and some of the anecdotes that you shared. And it's how do we change that culture within our school systems, within how teachers treat girls, within our exposure to cybersecurity and just broader tech roles. I don't think it's like a one-size-fit-all solution. It's from a societal perspective to help resolve this.
Well, I mean, put it in context. I'm an employer, and you tend to find employers instinctively think they're doing a good job on that type of issue. Is there any message that you would give as a woman to employers? Like 1 or 2 tips that they could take away? Yes.
First is find more women. Don't give me the excuse of, I can't find any. Go find them. And if they're not taking the bait, they're not taking the jobs that you're putting on the table, then go back and revise your strategy. Is there something in your role spec? Maybe your hiring manager isn't interviewing the woman in the right way. Is there anything that's turning her off from coming to the office? There's just so many things. Go back and revise your strategy and find those women, because they are out there. The second thing would be is look internally. Look internally into your structures and how can you promote more women up. I think that as a woman in any industry, if you see a senior level woman, you're more likely to be motivated. You're more likely to feel like, okay, I can now do this. I can now get there. It's promote more women. When you have the opportunity, promote them. I know, so I also work as an associate manager at Accenture, and at Accenture what we have is, one of the rules that we have is if a woman is ready for promotion, we will promote her, and that's the rule of trade. Even if there's a man ready for promotion, we will pick the woman, and you have to do some things like that. That's drastic.
And Gavin, what would you say about closing the ratio?
I think we spoke about being explicit, so I think you have to say we're going to have this ratio, and then aim for it. And like Coral said, we hired somebody recently for finance. Our financial controller is a lady. She's been with us 8 years, and she hired a guy to do the job because of the people she interviewed. He was the best. But we should have maybe looked longer and found a woman who was interested in the role to come into the tech space, to come into the tech environment. Vodafone do it very well. They've basically set numbers against their C-suite, they've set numbers against their management suite, and they hit them because it's a goal, it's a business objective to remove gender bias. If we pretend it's not there, well then it suits us to say, well, we'll hire the best person. But if it's been created by generations before us and we're uncomfortable with that and we want to change it, well then you actually have to go out and make some goals, set some goals and try and achieve them. I don't think it's good enough for us to say, Ruth hired the best person. Had we sat down with Carl a month before that, we might have said, well, actually, let's go out of our way to hire the best female candidate. And if we don't find her early, we'll have a look at the role again. We'll keep going until we do.
Stephen?
Yeah, no, we've just actively gone through a recruitment cycle, and we've recruited very, very experienced lady. And we're very excited about that. And if you look at the number of CVs, we got disproportionately all male, apart from 1 or 2 female. And we've recruited based on merit of the CV and the interview process and how one could conduct themselves. So whether that's by look or by design, that's how it played out. It was basically the right fit for the job and went through the interview process like the others, and obviously was selected on that basis. But I do agree with everything that you're saying, that if we're being meaningful about this, then we have to go the extra mile. I think events like this are obviously very, very good and powerful. It's getting it out there on a big event, big stage. Could more be done? I think yes. If you look at Enterprise Ireland, I talked about that. Obviously, haven't gone through the HPSU program recently. There's a lot of female entrepreneur programs being devised, and that really is about getting the message out there. It's dispelling a few myths. It's probably demystifying it so that people can see it's actually a lot easier. There are supports out there, and maybe we as a security profession need to do a better job at actually being seen as supporting this and not just paying lip service to it. And at the same time, it's also tied to the technical side of it, that if we see not that many women in tech roles as well, given that that seems to be the feeder system into security, well, then we need to look at that as well and joined up thinking in relation to that. I think, if you look at Coda Dojo I talked about earlier on, you see a lot of young girls coding alongside boys. Are they staying the course? I'm not quite sure. I wouldn't be able to speak to the statistics on that. But with the newfound cybersecurity dojo that we've created today, well, then hopefully we're going to go a long way there now with that. So,
Well, look, guys, that was very, very insightful. We don't have time for any questions, unfortunately, because it's a very tight schedule. But the guys are going to be about, so if anybody has any burning questions, you can have them at some point afterwards. Can I just ask you to join me in showing our appreciation for the panel? A round of applause. Yeah, that's you.